Back in the 1980s, I believe the FBI well, I was also a journalist back then. The FBI had this great big meeting, and I was invited to it. I knew the director, and he invited this thing. And they look at the uptick of killings in Chicago. And the killers were children, 12 years old, 11, 12 years old. And they said, they couldn't figure out why that these kids would be killing either other kids or other gang members. Well, because 12-year-olds don't go to jail. If you're a gang member, you don't want to pull the trigger. You can get a 12-year-old to do that. And the 12 years old will take the money, take the food, take the clothes, take this and take that, and give him a gun. And he said, "Oh yeah, he has no problems, no morals, going out there and shooting somebody and killing them." Right? Why? Because he's not going to tell on the guy who hired him. Because he's more afraid of the guy who hired him than he is afraid of the police and the judges. And it's pretty well like that today. One of the things they noticed is that kids 12 years old with that thing, grade school children who go to school, have high respect. They get a gold star on their shoulder because they killed somebody. They get a silver star on their shoulder if they wound somebody. They get a brass star if they shot at somebody. And these kids were running around with basically little stars. And you basically, if the guy had a gold star, you stayed away from him. You did he was told. He was not exactly your friend, but you sure don't want to make him an enemy. Especially that thing. They also noticed something else. If a child was into sports, basketball, and usually baseball, and maybe rarely football, if the kid was into basketball, the kid could be on the court, walk out of the building, and get shot. Why? Because he's better than a gang member. If you had high grades, the last thing you wanted to do is have the teacher give you A's, because if you got A's, very likely you're going to get a 45 into you. Right, you're going to get killed. Smart people are shot. Right, by dumb people. Yes. Because they're uppity or trying to be the man. Yes. And why do they play? Why do they play? Well, first of all, you got a 12-year-old, 13-year-old. You're not sending them to prison. You're not going to give them hardcore. You're not going to execute them. That's right. And the kid can continue to kill for the gang all he wants. He could be the hitman, And I'll just put it this way. You ever see the 14-year-old kid sitting in the back seat being driven by two other thugs? Gang members, chauffeurs. Right. And he's wearing the jewelry. Right. And the nice clothes. And he gets the girls. And what is he? He's a gang member. Right. And he's the guy, he's the trigger man. And you ever go walk into Cabrini Greens when it was up and you saw the whole place is falling apart, except for gang members' apartments where they have a big screen TV. The freezer is filled with steak. Right. And the apartment is clean, where outside the hall there might be rats running around. And when they tore all that down, what did the gang members, the head of the gang members do? They moved mommy and brothers and sisters out to the suburbs. Oh, they went to not Bensonville, Naperville. They went to Naperville. Yeah. A lot of folks out there are from the inner city of Chicago. And they also got Section 8. And the gang members say, hey, Mom, you're going on Section 8 and you're moving out to Naperville with my brothers and sisters. And, you know, will Naperville police ever visit these homes? No. No. What do you think? What's in the basement? Gee, what's that growing in the basement again? Oh, tulips. What's that pile? Oh, that's fertilizer. Is that a pile of stuff on the table? You know. But you got these serial killers running around. And what do you think happens when they become adults? They had a good life as a child, being a killer. Well, I guess you would call them serial killers, not mass murderers. But what are you going to do? If they get caught, they walk in there with that gold star on their shoulder. Yeah. And they're tough, and they're mean, and they're rotten. And as Sheriff Dart says, we like to get them out of our prison into a state prison as soon as we can. They're yeah. So, but unless Attorney General, unless Miss Fox releases them back on the streets, which Sheriff Dart says, you just released a murderer on the streets, and he had a bunch of guns, so we arrested him, and you just put him out there because of what reason again? Oh, they're supporting your campaign. I shouldn't say that about Miss Fox. That she can have me shot. But yeah, you know. And what do you think? There's a lot of children vanish in Chicago. Maybe it's because we're a big city, but children vanish, gone. You know, you don't even find a body. Well, I shouldn't say that, but adult women vanish, especially in the black community. Poof, they're gone, and which is pretty bad. And where are they? They're gone. And we can't find them. Unless we have a John Wayne Gacy running around with a stash of in the basement, like arsenic and old lace, you know, burying somebody in the basement. Or they're cremating them, or they're selling them into slavery. Yes, there's still traffic to slavery going on. Ever been to Chinatown? No? ICE would love to walk into Chinatown in some of the, quote, apartment buildings that have stuff of illegals in Chicago. Well, you go into the Mexican community. They just changed the districting in wards in Chicago because of the doubling of the Mexican population or the Spanish population in Chicago. I mean, it's literally doubled in Chicago within 10 years. Is that the birth rate going up? No, that's the little feet coming to Chicago, which is not only Chicago, New York, Los Angeles, Seattle. Yeah. And at the same time, as someone said, black neighborhoods, why? We got more blocks here and yeah, thing. Not like the Spanish people, folks. That's that thing. And all that hate. The same people who are in Mexico City belonging to gangs are up here, right? They haven't decided not to belong to a gang. Drug trafficking is very high in Chicago. And if you were 12 years old and in a gang, you're going to do what the gang member says, you know. You may be the enforcer for the gang and hitman for the other thing. And why? there's a multi-billion-dollar illegal drug trade in Chicago. You know, when a 12-year-old kid goes to church on Sunday morning and then picks up his gun so he can be selling dope later on, or being the enforcer, that little 12-year-old kid who's sitting there with the guns in a paper bag next to him, he's the guy is the enforcer. So if somebody in a car decides to start shooting at his friends on the corner, he returns fire. They're pretty bloody. But what are you going to do? People say, well, there's a lot of killing in Chicago. There's a lot of illegal drug trafficking in Chicago. Look at the smash and grab. They're children. Look at who's hijacking cars. They're children. You take a 12, 13, 14-year-old thing, he steals a car, what are you going to do with them? Ms. Fox kicks them back out on the street. And what do? They steal another car. And they're armed. And what do you do with all the guns? Why they got 5,000 guns off the streets in Chicago? Yeah! And what did you do with those who illegally had a firearm? Didn't have a FOID card, underage. And what did you do? You released them back on the streets. Congratulations. And very likely, and they're not going to talk. They're not going to talk against their gang. They're not going to talk against adults who may be supplying them with drugs, supplying them with guns, supplying them with that thing, anything they want. They're not going to say against their thing. They're not going to say a person who comes from a foreign country, who has a business here, and happens to have all the knockoff stuff from another country, you know. Oh, yes. And you go to Chicago, you look at a lot of small mom and pop places, and they sell a lot of knockoffs. And that's the reality of Chicago, is a mixing thing. And they got your serial killers from the old country coming here too. Yeah. Oh, it's a city of brotherly love. No, that's New York. We're just a windy city. We're full of hot wind. And but what are you going to do?